President Obama, of course, is getting ready for his trip to London, where he will try to sell his economic plan to the world leaders at the G20 summit. This is the president's first trip overseas since he went into office. The main purpose is to revive the world economy and to sell his plan for stimulus around the world. Let's bring in our panel. J.D. Foster is a senior fellow in the economics and fiscal policy at the Heritage Foundation, and Jason Rose, a former senior advisor to Mitt Romney's presidential campaign. Doug Schoen is our frequent guest and former advisor to President Clinton and a Fox News contributor. Doug, I read that there's about 500 people going on this trip.
Yep.
When you were with the Clinton administration, is that normal, or was the plane a little bit leaner than that?
Well, the plane was a little leaner than that. I think that the 500 people speaks to the urgency attached to this meeting, but also of a consensus with the Europeans who don't agree with a lot of the stimulus and a lot of
Angela plan. Gordon Brown's taking a lot of heat for lining up with this stimulus plan. He's got some very interesting opposition going on in Parliament these days. How do you think all this is going to go over?
Well, it's going to be a very polite and warm discussion, but it's going to be very energetic behind closed doors. There's a fundamental disagreement of approach between the supersized stimulus plans and the more normal-sized stimulus plans that different countries are pursuing. The United States is now in a supersized model, and that is making many governments around the world very uncomfortable because we're all capital markets borrowing money, and that all this borrowing is eventually going to drive up interest rates. Angela Merkel is right to be very concerned about this.
Jason, you brought up an interesting point when you were talking earlier, and that is that Saab in Sweden, they decided, we're not going to help out Saab. And this comes on the day that we're hearing that, the rope is just going to keep being let out, basically, to our own automakers in this country. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we're prolonging the inevitable, and we're spreading the pain out over many, many years instead of just taking the hit up front that we need to and let the market correct itself and continue to function. I mean, the fact that a socialist country like Sweden refuses to bail out their automaker Saab, yet we are climbing over ourselves to nationalize banks, to provide financial support to our auto industry. To me, I feel like I live in the bizarro world. And if you look back to the 1970s and the recession that we experienced, it was the pro-growth policies of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and by that I mean low taxes and regulatory reform, that helped pull those countries out of the recession. In terms of economic performance. Right now, Gordon Brown and Barack Obama are doing the exact opposite,
right,
which is adopting Keynesian economic policy to just spend our way out of it, and
Doug,
they're expecting the same result.
Exactly. Yeah. Doug, I'm starting to feel sorry for Gordon Brown. He comes over here, and the story is that the gifts that he was given were not really commensurate with his position as the leader of Great Britain. Now he's standing by Barack Obama's wish for this stimulus package, and he's getting beaten up for it politically at home.
Well, he is. He's 10 points behind in the polls. He's getting attacked for being both a toady of the United States and not standing up for the British people, which is hurting him. At the same time, he wants to have a special relationship. He's been downgraded to a special partnership, and he isn't convinced, nor are the rest of the European leaders, that the stimulus will work.
Yeah, and what about Gordon Brown and Barack Obama and that relationship, JG? What does that look like to you?
Well, I think my panelists have said it right. Gordon Brown wants a special relationship. He's frankly looking to Barack Obama to help pull his political coals out of the fire, but when he was here visiting the United States, he was treated shabbily by the Obama administration. Right now, Gordon Brown is obviously in serious trouble. In fact, President Obama is very much consistent with the views and approaches taken in Europe. So he should be well received at the summit. In many respects, he's more European than the Europeans. He believes in big government,
but they seem to be changing their tune.
Healthcare.
JD, they seem to be changing their tune a bit, in terms of how much confidence they have in a lot of spending in order to stimulate the economy. So do you anticipate that President Obama will also start kind of curtailing his feelings toward large stimulus as a result of this trip?
No, I think they'll just end up in a situation where they to agree to disagree, but communicate to nothing, and everyone goes about their own domestic policies as they best see fit. That's how these things usually play out. That's how it'll play out again.
And meanwhile, everybody has spent a ton of money, and
Right.
First trip when he went.
He was treated with respect and a little wariness. And I think what we're going to see this time is that there's where economy down, sure. Where do we put the detainees? That's a different question. Europeans don't want them, and they don't want a lot of what Obama
Good
is
point.
promising.
You know what? We have a lot of serious issues on the table, and we should really get down to brass tacks and do some effective work here at this meeting. Gentlemen, thank you. J.D. Foster, Jason Rowe, and Doug Schoen. Always good to have you all.